Hi, this is Daniel from Ultimate Guitar Academy, and I'm going to help you learn the notes on the guitar. Before looking at this, you should already know the full musical alphabet. That is the alphabet using naturals, sharps, and flats. Let's look at how the notes work on the guitar. Here's a picture of a guitar, but if we turn it round so that it's in a similar position to how most right-handed guitarists would see it, we're going to have a close look at the fretboard. This is a diagram of the fretboard, where we have the low E string, the A string, D string, G string, B string, and our high E string at the top. To make life easier, we're actually going to forget the flats for a second and just work in naturals as well as sharps. Now, our lowest string starts on an E note, not an A. So what we're going to do is move all of our notes over so that we're starting our alphabet on E instead of A. If we then move each note up into a fret, we have all of the notes of that string. You should be able to see that every time I move up by one fret, I simply move up by one note, including sharps. If we remove the sharps, we have a simple pattern of E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, the natural notes of the alphabet. What we're doing here is we're simply skipping the sharp. So from F, we skip the sharp and get G. From G, we skip the sharp and get A. From A, we skip the sharp and get B. From B, there is no sharp, so I go straight to C. If we learn just the natural notes, we can actually then use them to find the sharps. Remember, a sharp means +1. So if we find A and then go +1 and move one fret higher, we get A sharp. Or instead, if we move one fret lower, we get A flat, because flats mean -1. When doing this, just make sure you start with the correct note. So if we were figuring out notes on a different string, for example A, we have to start with the note A. So our notes are A, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. Again, if we remove the sharps, we're left with a much easier pattern to memorize of just the natural notes. Once again, we skip the sharp. So from C, we would skip a sharp and go to D, but from B, we would go straight to C. Also, from your open A string, we skip the sharp and go to B. That's because the first fret is an A sharp note. This confuses a lot of guitarists because if we go back to the E string, we had open as E and F as first fret. Many students get used to going to first fret for the first note after open. However, that only works for the low E string and also the B string. For your A string, we're going to have to skip first fret and go from open to second fret when figuring out just the natural notes. It might seem confusing, but we simply repeat this process for every string. Again, sticking to just the natural notes. Now here are some tricks. Your two E strings have the same notes. They're simply 2 octaves apart. Also, 5th fret just so happens to be your next open string. So 5th on the low E is your open A. 5th on the A is your open D, and so on. There is one exception here, and that's the G string. 4th on the G string gives you a B note, which is your open B. This is how many people tune their guitar. They simply play one correct note and make the other one match. Also, 12th fret has the same notes as open, but it's simply 1 octave higher. And 10th fret will be 1 natural note lower. Another great trick is to use chord shapes to help you memorize the tonic notes. For example, here's a G chord. The G major chord is built on a G note. So this note is G. If you have to find a G on the low E string, a great tip is to hold the G chord and then you've got your G note. From there, you can sharpen or flatten it if needed. Here's an F bar chord which is built on an F note. So this note is F, and once again you can sharpen that if needed. Here's an open C chord, which happens to be built on a C note. And here's a B bar chord, which again happens to be built on a B note. Once you've found these natural notes, you can just sharpen and flatten them as required. Another great tip is to use octaves to help find notes on difficult strings. An octave is always 2 in front, 2 below. So these notes are both F. There is one exception here, and that's when we're using the B or the high E strings. A great idea, just to make life easy for the time being, is to avoid using these 2 strings when figuring out notes using octaves. Another great tip is that when you reach 12th fret, you simply start the same pattern of notes again, just an octave higher. This means that your 1st fret note will be the same as fret 13. Your 2nd fret note will be the same as 14. You simply plus 12 frets in order to move up 1 octave. So remember, when learning the notes of the guitar, learn only the natural notes, and then +1 to sharpen or -1 to flatten them. Learn just open to fret 12 and then repeat this pattern for the remaining frets. Use chord shapes to help you remember notes, and use octaves to help find difficult notes. Of course, remember that both E strings are the same. Another great tip is to refer to power chords by their tonic name, not by their fret number. So you wouldn't call it a power chord at 3rd on the low E, you would just call it a G power chord, also known as a G5.